Hello everyone and welcome to another RCT2 review. Today we are looking at Six Flags Great North by Gijssie1234. He is unfortunately no longer active. This was his last park, but it's a pretty good one and one that I wanted to look at tonight. As you've probably guessed if you've watched a number of the channels or my videos in my channel, I'm a pretty big fan of American style realistic parks in this game. Sort of the coaster heavy, ride heavy, sort of minimalistic theming stuff. And he did this better than a lot of folks, although there is definitely some glaring issues among the park. But this is one that I do come back to on occasion, sort of a guilty pleasure park almost. I do really enjoy looking at it and seeing some of the things that are in it. Um, this was 5 years old now, which is actually not as old as I thought it was going to be when I was looking it up to do this video. But why don't we jump right on in and take a look? One of the things that I was always impressed with him is the amount of curves that Gijssie had brought into all of the elements. So you'll see it in all the roadways out here. You'll see it in some of the ride surroundings inside the park as well. Just very kind of smooth and clean. His style is very small, as you can see here, just with the architecture and everything. The floor heights are relatively low in some instances. You can see this entrance building and this restaurant here right on the inside. It's all quite quite low and small compared to some of the things that we look at, but it actually works pretty well because the scale of the entire park kind of stays at that same level. So I don't necessarily hate it. To be honest, I can kind of go both ways on scale, whether it's small or large, as long as the whole thing is consistent. And for me, the style worked pretty well. So pretty nice entrance here, sort of kind of similar to Baker Lake from Coupon, and some other ones also that use this sort of curved approach to the turnstiles flanked by buildings on either side. I do like the varied forms of buildings here and the entrance. It's a little bit bland, a little bit brown heavy, which to be honest, I think you'll see a little bit more of that as we go in. You'll notice in some of these areas that there's some things that look awfully familiar. If you are familiar with a number of the realistic New Element parks, this building right here, this hemispherical building, is very similar to Robbie 92's in Six Flags Santa Fe, which I don't think we've done a review of yet, but I will have to do pretty soon here because I do like that park quite a lot. To be fair, it is also a building within real theme parks. So this park is largely based off of Six Flags St. Louis, which I believe is where that building is. Either there, there's also one similar at California's Great America. But it's a nice structure and a nice form using the detail steeplechase track. Is definitely a nice touch for something like that. Sort of an interesting choice to make a restaurant slash gift shop slash whatever that is, sort of the center line focal point as you come in. It's a little bit of an odd choice, perhaps, but Six Flags St. Louis, if you're familiar with that park, is quite an odd layout anyway. It's sort of similar to this, where it's just sort of a bizarre entry point, and then it gets going kind of as you go either way. So why don't we go to the right, and we'll start on this side. Get this great looking theater here with this pretty nice, interesting overhang. Got some cool lattice work on there, which I do appreciate. The double SNS tower here, I really actually like the top portion of this quite a lot. I see a lot of people stagger the SNS towers when they do the two buys, just for some added interest. But I actually kind of like these where it's definitely squared off to each other, and it gives you a nice circle up there. You can kind of see how small the overall design is here with the queue line within the ride area here. I actually like that a lot. I think it's a nice look for the whole thing. So a little bit of an oddball layout again here because we've gotten to a dead end. So we got to retrace our steps, go around the wave swinger, and then go back to this side where we've got some sort of standard bounce stuff and then a couple other little structure back of house type buildings here. And then as we come along, we get to Batman. As any good Six Flags park does, here is Batman the Ride. This is the mirror image Batman the Ride to the standard layout, which is good. One of the kind of oddities of this is the second corkscrew here, and I'm also realizing that all of the supports are showing, which I think is just a glitch that has happened with Open. So try and ignore that. The supports should not be showing beyond the custom supports. We can probably just turn it off like that for now. So Six Flags St. Louis also has the mirror image Batman. One of the notes for that one is this wing over / corkscrew, whatever you want to call it. And the real one actually goes the other way, which throws off a lot of folks when they're trying to do recreations of this ride. So definitely a something to not miss if you do this ride at any point. I like the train coming by the queue line here and the way the queue kind of wraps around the back. Definitely a nice look there. A little bit of theming on the side here. Not really a defined Gotham City area. I mean, on one hand, it kind of looks like it was just plonked in into the park, which is, sort of typical Six Flags. Although back during the late 90s when the Batman coasters were taking over all the Six Flags parks, it definitely had a more planned feel. Although I do like this Joker themed swing ride here, the swinging ship. One of the early custom swinging ships, I suppose. Very nicely done. Here's sort of our second midway, which almost continues on the other side here. We have our train station on the one side, and then the Ferris wheel right next to it. Almost kind of not sure which one is meant to be the focal point here, but again, we have food at the end of it. A little bit of a park planning frustration here is none of these things line up. So that ride, this train station, or is this a train station? Yeah, it is, which is also sort of weird that they're right next to each other, more or less. None of them line up on the midway here. We have this beautifully crafted midway with these great trees in the middle, a couple of different textures here. I love the different tarmac or concrete patterns. Really nicely done, actually, but then none of it lines up. So that's a little bit of a miss, I think, as far as I'm concerned. Here's a swing ride, similar to the style that I did in Six Flags Carolina. Definitely a nice thing to see, at least from a operational flat ride standpoint. I do like that. Really love this Grand Theater building with the sort of puke green, for lack of a better term, walls. I think that's a very nice look. Let's keep on moving. So we kind of wrap around. We'll find ourselves in another oddball path situation here, crossing over. A couple of games here, a little 2x2 ride. Couple of just interesting kids rides here, flanked by a giant or Invertigo, not the giant Invertigo boomerang, just the standard Vekoma Invertigo, which has this great sign out front. Just sort of a weird place for the two kids rides, perhaps. I do like the supports on this, really nicely done. I wish there was a flat piece right here. I'd almost have sacrificed it going down so far to get a flat piece in. But really beautiful supports. I'll bring the supports back though, so the wooden coaster doesn't look funky. I think my preference would still be to put a section of flat track in the Cobra roll just to spread it out a little bit, but then your trade-off is that the back spikes aren't next to each other, which is a little bit sad. So it's just a tough one to do in the game. This Enterprise is honestly one of my favorite little bits of the park, just with the way that the ride pad is formed versus the little landscape buffer and then the ride fence outside of that to the general guest path. I think this is absolutely beautiful, incredibly well done. Got the nice ride operator booth there. It's got our queue line on the backside. It just looks really good. So definitely one of the better looking rides, in my opinion, within this park. And then a couple little, what I assume are food stalls, since they have some queue line spaces there. Which brings us back to our big wooden coaster. So this is Screaming Eagle, which is also pulled from Six Flags St. Louis. Well, let's ride along here. The real one of these is just in the back of the park, same kind of location. It has a really beautiful long layout, very photogenic, or at least the sections you can see. It's actually quite grown up over with trees over time. Sort of a bit of an oddball deal here with this turn into another lift hill there, which is odd. But anyway, here we are, off for the first drop, second drop. This is why I advocate flat pieces on top of these sorts of hills, because it looks a little bit, peaked right there. A little bit slow over there. Unbanked corners, as you would expect for one of these kind of rides. But then we're going to do this out and back with these sort of two dogleg elements almost. Pacing is not too bad. On the diagonal, I don't think you need a flat section here. It's honestly okay at this point. But on the straight sections, or on the orthogonal sections, I do think it needs one. Just looks a little tight, perhaps. And a nice long covered brake run. This is a important thing to have if you're doing these old wooden coasters that usually would have started with skid brakes. So you really need that covering over top. So anyway, nicely done. Nice little wooden coaster. I think it works well. I do really like the seating area out here, and then again, this pathway and Midway Plaza here. Just really all of those path forms are really solid in this park. I think that's maybe one of the biggest strengths. Crossing the railroad track a couple of times here. This is not a terribly U.S. park thing. You're really not going to see this many crossings, because in U.S. parks, they're going to be either staffed or have mechanical guards or both in a lot of instances, and you're really not going to see that in U.S. parks. So if you're doing that sort of thing, I recommend trying to minimize your path layout where it crosses over the train tracks as best as you can. I mean, it's not always possible, but thinking through a lot of the parks that I've been to in the U.S., you're really not going to see a whole lot of that. Here's a starflyer painted with the Cedar Fair colors, which is a little bit funny, but not a fully operational one. It does spin around here at the bottom, but it's not the up and down one. We kind of develop that later on in the game. Then, as we continue across here, we'll jump in here to the log flume, which is kind of well, actually, no, it's not. I was gonna say it was a small log flume, but it's really not. My one comment about this is that it's backwards. So coming out of the station, you've got this lift into this big drop and splash, and pretty beautiful viewing area here for guests and diners and everything like that. But then the ride's not over yet. There's still a lot more to go. It has a little hill here, and then some turns and things like that. It's you don't want to get your fun part over with at the very beginning. You want to build up to it. So in my opinion, this one probably should have been reversed a little bit, where you put your station somewhere over here, and then you do your little drop, do some meandering, then go up and have your big guy at the end. So just something to consider as far as your layouts go when you're building parks. You've also got this little Canyon Blaster coaster here, which is a little bit of an oddball one, mostly because it's got a pretty substantial lift hill for not doing terribly much. I don't dislike the layout. I just think it might have been better if it was kind of contained to its own spot rather than path or train underneath of it, and it could shrink down just a little bit. I think that would fit the size better. I do like this little rock work, all sorts of things here and there. Again, super cool pathway. I love how this brick pathway juts out on the side here, sort of on the diagonal with the rock climbing wall there. A couple little huts. A little bit more theming as we get along to this side. This is more of a defined kids area, perhaps, with the 2x2 ride here with the bus and the little play water tower also. As we wrap around, we're going to get to another odd park layout thing, which you can kind of see since we've gone down this route here. This is actually a dead end on this side the whole way around, which is a little bit odd. We do have this great theater here at the end, which almost appears to be abandoned, although it's not. It's just sort of it appears to be kind of in disuse, I suppose. Kind of tall on the backside here, but screened well with landscaping, which is a good use of landscaping for sure. Bumper cars, nicely put together, and then a go-kart track around the backside here, kind of similar to the one in Six Flags Carolina, just without the hack. Okay, and then back here we have Nitro. This is the B&M hypercoaster of sorts. Um, this one's a little bit odd. Couple reasons. First of all, transfer track's not going to work because you can see it's longer than the table. Second of all, there's a flat corner at the top, which is not what you see. Let me pull out the supports again, just so it looks like it did when it was released. This is messy. I honestly feel like diagonal drops are stretched out enough that you don't need to do this weirdness unless you're going on an absolutely huge drop. So it's a little bit of an oddball thing there, but this is nice. The first two hills taken very nicely, good speed, and a weird unbanked there, but drop down and then have the return run here, a little bit of a weird speed hill there, and then theoretically a mid-course brake run. This ride probably isn't long enough to warrant one. Same comment applies here with the straight sections on the little speed hill, and then probably wants a little bit longer brake run for sure. Definitely wants to bump out over where this path currently is. I probably would have just gone over top of the path and dropped the supports in it. What I can say though is I do love this station. Very I don't know, almost Cedar Fair-esque. I feel like you see a lot of those sorts of things. A lot of people have done this look in the game. I know it was in Starpoint, the Pacific Coaster did, and plenty of others. But I love that look over the whole thing. It wasn't as easy back then without a lot of the tile inspector tools like an open RCT to make the station platform go away. But now I would absolutely recommend that for dropping that away. All right, so let's backtrack. We'll walk all the way back around, all the way. Note the cool Ferris wheel, which I didn't necessarily point out fully. Not operational, which is a little sad, but it is kind of nice. Also love this park. There's almost a fear, I think, sometimes when people build parks of having just open green space. There shouldn't be. I think it's actually really nice, and a lot of parks have it. You could even run some invisible paths in there to get some guests hanging out in the space, or put some benches or things like that. But there doesn't need to be a fear of open space. It can actually look really nice. Though I would say the train probably needs a fence, but still, it's a very nice look. All right, so next coaster, this is Ninja. So Ninja is based on the Ninja at Six Flags St. Louis again. So all of the coasters here so far taking inspiration from there, except for Nitro, which is sort of a mix of a bunch of different things, and feels like maybe a little bit out of place. So this one actually kind of has a neat layout as far as I'm concerned, just the real one anyway, and the supports were actually done very well on this, I feel like. So this is maybe my favorite layout in the game, this one, or in this game arc. Got some pretty cool supports here with the thicker ones, and then the Giga Coaster track underneath. You do have a mid-course brake run here that's actually grabbing. You could probably get away with not doing that and then just putting a brake at the end, but I get it, and the pacing is fine. Love the corkscrew over the train, very much a trope, but still okay. And then final helix here into this diagonal brake run, and then the actual brake run. A little bit short maybe, but to be honest, I just like the layout, and I think the supports are done well. They're kind of minimalistic. There could maybe be a little bit beefier stuff on the lattice here, but hard to complain. It is very nice. All right, so as we move along, we get over here to Penguin's Blizzard River, which looks quite a bit like my one in Six Flags Carolina, including the little penguin sculpture in the tunnel and everything in the station. But to be fair, I also did pull my inspiration from Kentucky Kingdom and Six Flags New England, so sure he did the same. But nicely set up in here, kind of goes back into the trees a little bit, so you're not really going to see it from the front. A lot of good use of the grass land blocks, something that I don't do very often, but does look rather nice. A little bit of context out here, this power line kind of coming in, a little bit maybe awkward just because there's not more of it, but not too bad. And then on this side we have Mr. Freeze, which is my other favorite ride in the park. It's probably, you know, it's simple and it's a clone of the real thing, but they're kind of hard to make in the game for a couple of reasons. So for one, you've got this vertical spike, but a 6 across tower, so it's got to be offset on one side or another. And actually, you turn this in all the different directions, it actually looks relatively centered just because of the amount of like themed kind of gunk on the side of it. It looks good. This overbanked turn is usually kind of tough to do. A little bit awkward here coming out of the inverted top hat here right into that corner, but I honestly don't have any issues with that. I think it's handled really well. But cool launch tunnel here, nice station on the backside here too. So we'll wait for this one to take off. All right. There we go. So it's over launched a little bit. You can shoestring this, so you don't have to do that. But you got your vertical spike here, which would push the thing up a little further in real life. These are a set of limb stators on the spike. So actually nice detail there, and just the supports in general I think are very nice. So this, in my opinion, is the best released Mr. Freeze type ride that I've seen in the game. So definitely done well there. I wrap around a little bit, get to a car ride here, and then let's bring the supports back so we can look at our last coaster here. This is American Thunder. This is based off of the GCI by the same name at Six Flags St. Louis. It's a little more compact than the real thing. And also not totally GCI feeling in the fact that we've got this flat turn here. But got this great drop through the structure. Kind of another flat corner here. You're really going to see a little more undulation for GCI. You could almost call this something else, like a different manufacturer, just based on kind of a bunch of flat stacked corners in a figure eight of sorts. But it's a pretty short layout. It looks nice. It looks nice, and it's one of those that I'd consider photogenic. I just would not consider it a GCI coaster. Definitely doesn't quite have the tenants that you would expect from it. Here's a cool slingshot ride on the diagonal. I do like the three-colored tower here, and then the vehicle in the middle. And then this is great. This diagonal midway here, I think that's incredibly well done and just handled well. I mean, you consider this midway, this one here, and this one up here. I would definitely say that was his strength over everything, is just sort of pathway detailing and pathway shaping. The whole space, walkway space, kind of grows and shrinks just as it's needed throughout the area. The park layout is terrible, and part of that I'm sure was on purpose, just based on trying to emulate Six Flags St. Louis, which also has a terrible park layout. But you zoom out a little bit, and we see that this whole upper, section here was a dead end. You got a loop here, you've got a loop here, and then this is sort of all kind of clumped together. And this was a weird dead end on this side. So it's a little bit of an odd park layout, which is kind of one of the reasons that I suggest trying to knock out a park layout, at least preliminarily, when you first start to lay out a park. I think it's necessary just to really help it move along and make sure that you're thinking through all of the stuff. Some pavilions out here, which we didn't necessarily look at from the start. Pretty simple, but I think they're nice. It's a good color scheme, good look for the whole thing. The park is chopped pretty close to the edge. So there's not a whole lot of context around. I wish there was almost a little bit more, or just, I don't know, maybe another coaster or two. Even though it is a fairly decent sized park, it's still, with his scale, everything is smaller, so it feels kind of smaller. I would have almost replaced the B&M coaster back here with something like Boss, if we're going for the Six Flags St. Louis theme. Do the big, huge CCI coaster that uses the terrain a little bit. That could have been a lot of fun as well. But, like I said, this is one of my kind of guilty pleasure parks, just because there's, for as many flaws as I've pointed out this time, or just things that I think could be improved, there's a lot of really just nice stuff in here. notably the pathways, like we've already talked about, just some of the detailing, some of the little micro details and things like that. It's a good park to look at, just to not forget some of those kind of more minute details as you look at the overall macro of park design. So I think it's worth looking at, and it's one of those parks that I come back to every couple of months or years as I'm just searching for things to look at that kind of feel nostalgic. So this one is one of those parks, but I'll post a link in the description so you can download it yourself and take a look and maybe get some of your own inspiration from it. But anyway, that's our park for today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. As always, if you have any park suggestions that you'd like to see get reviewed, or you would like to suggest your own for review, feel free to message me and send it my way. We will be back with more park reviews. A couple of hacking tutorials are coming up soon, hopefully. And then we will also have Andrel's Amusement Academy coming up this Saturday, which is the 6th of February. So definitely look out for that. But until next time, thank you guys very much for watching, and have a great day. Bye now.